Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for being here. I think there are fewer things in the world more joyous and full of abandon and delight than seeing a doggie digging merrily in a backyard. Might not be so delightful to the people in the house, but there's something so primal and wonderful about watching an animal that you love digging up his little bone, or in my case, hiding yet another sock. When we're very small, if we're fortunate, we're taken to a playground or a beach, given a shovel and a pail, and invited to dig. There's something very cathartic, very tactile, very powerful, and yet very soothing about the act of digging. This parsha has so many famous moments preserved in art and literature and drama, and yet there's a chapter in the middle that doesn't get quite as much attention. And because the blessing, one of the myriad blessings of the Torah, is that it is true that every time we read it, we're supposed to ideally find something new in it, and I've certainly found that to be the case. Oftentimes when we go back and read it, if we give ourselves the luxury to do it, something rises up to the surface and says, Darshani, explain me, or at least think about me, if you can't quite explain it. Just before today's Torah reading, Isaac relives a similar scene to that his father Abraham and his mother Sarah experienced. There is a strange interaction with King Abimelech, the king of Gerar, and here the king of the Philistines, Abimelech, says near the land of Gerar, "She is your wife. Why did you tell me she is your sister?" There's this strange role-playing experience, and it feels very familiar. But then this relationship between Isaac and the Philistine king continues. Isaac sows in the land, reaps 100-fold. He grows wealthy like his father, even in a time of famine. The man grew richer and was very wealthy. Said of Isaac, he acquired flocks and herds and a large household, so that the Philistines envied him. And the Philistines stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of his father Abraham, and they filled the wells with earth. And Abimelech said to Isaac, "Go away from us, for you have become far too big for us." Words that will foreshadow what Pharaoh will say in the book of Exodus, although he's quite reluctant to send the Israelites away. But this notion of Abraham's family somehow getting too big to be dealt with, even when it's clear from the text they were still quite a tiny bunch. Something which I think we still very much deal with today. The sense that the Jewish people are this enormous entity with so much power, and yet we're just still the tiniest of people. Doing our best. So Isaac departed from there and encamped in the Wadi of Gerar, where he settled. Isaac dug anew the wells which had been dug in the days of his father Abraham, and which the Philistines had stopped up after Abraham's death, and he gave them the same names that his father had given him. But when Isaac's servants digging in the wadi found there a well of spring water, the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." So he named that well Esek, meaning contention, because they contended with him. And when they dug yet another well, they disputed over that one also. So he named it Sitnah, literally hostility or harassment. And when they dug yet another well, they had to move from there. And with this new well that they built, this time they didn't quarrel over it. So he called it Rehoboth, meaning wide or expansive, and saying, now at last God has granted us ample space to increase in the land. From there he went up to Beersheba, and that's where our Torah portion began today. So it's a little important to have that backstory. It's probably a good argument for reading the entire Parsha every year, but we'll let that rest for a while. Usually we choose some sentences or a section, and we do the best we can with it. But look at this emphasis on digging and redigging, because it doesn't stop there. Really unusual. God appeared to Isaac and said, I am the God of your father Abraham. Fear not, I am with you. I will bless you and increase your offspring for the sake of my servant Abraham. First time we hear that idea of the merit of the ancestors. So Isaac built an altar and invoked God by name. Isaac pitched his tent there, and his servants started digging a well. And Avimelech came from Gerar and said to them, Isaac said, why have you come to me, seeing that you've been hostile to me and have driven me away from you? Like, keep your distance, please. But they said, we now see plainly that God has been with you. And we thought, let there be a sworn treaty between our two parties, between you and us. Let us make a pact with you that will you not do us harm, just as we have not molested you, but have always dealt kindly with you, and sent you away in peace. From now on, be you blessed of the Lord. It's a little duplicitous. This is not the case that they had always dealt kindly with Isaac and his family, or with Abraham and his family. We see this continual cycle of rupture, of attempting to start again, and of, at least thankfully in this brief chapter, an olive branch of reconciliation. And Isaac doesn't spit in their faces or anything akin. What does he do? He made for them a feast, and they ate and drank. The next morning they exchanged oaths. Isaac bade them farewell, and they departed from him in peace. And the very next thing that happens is Isaac's servants came and told him about the well they had dug and said to him, we have found water. This cycle of digging wells, which happens multiple times in just a few verses, asks us to stop and think about the symbolism of digging deep. They could have been so easily discouraged after the wells had been filled in, stopped up. One interpretation is that it's just a metaphor, a powerful one, that what they were really stopping up or attempting to put a cork in were the teachings that Abraham had attempted to bring into the world. But even when the wells are stopped up, Isaac and his family and his servants demonstrate a kind of resilience and tenacity that is an excellent model for all of us. Isaac, at first, is trying to live the life that his father lived. It even literally embodied in the fact that he experiences the same strange scene with having to say that his wife is his sister and confusion in the palace and all that. It seems odd that that scene repeats, but though I always just thought it was an oddity, this year I'm realizing it is Isaac's attempt, or at least the Torah's attempt, to suggest that Isaac cannot live the same life as his father. And yet, by going through some of the same experiences, he may come to a different kind of understanding. And after Abraham's death, though, reconciliation with the painful childhood and young adulthood that he had with his father. So there's a sense of tikkun, of healing, by going through the same experiences that his father did. But then with this ongoing scene with the wells, when people have been through trauma, and family rupture or national rupture, we can really resonate, I think, with Isaac's feeling of perhaps not being able to go deep. And yet the Torah is so wise in its depiction of these wells being dug over and over again. Digging a well is no small thing. Andy's family depends on one for their water in rural Montana. When the power goes out, there's no water from the well. And I have hauled water from the creek in the depths of winter until the power came back on. You don't realize the necessity of a well until you can't get water out of it. Digging a well is an intense effort. It's not just the activity of trying to locate a defensible and sustainable water source. It's a spiritual well digging as well. Forgive me. These days, we are being asked to dig and to dig. And I understand that a lot of people are tired. To keep the water flowing, to keep the source of nourishment and cleanliness alive and flowing takes an enormous amount of energy. It takes all of us. And when I mean all of us, I don't mean only all of us in numbers, but it takes all of ourselves. These last weeks, months, years, let's be honest, have seen one well of hope or joy or sustenance be continually stopped up. But like Isaac, who might have had every possible reason to say, I give up, he kept digging. He kept looking for new sources, distancing himself until he found a new water source, naming it literally space or distance, Rehovot. Isaac puts physical distance between himself and Avimelech, but he also makes some emotional and spiritual space between himself and his father. It's a nice teaching by Rabbi Chaim Herring, a wonderful name for a rabbi, I think, Rabbi Herring. On the surface, Isaac's struggle to look for new water reads like a contemporary dispute between two nations experiencing a drought. But Isaac's story really is one about the search for identity in the wake of loss. It's a journey from uncertainty to discovery, from depletion to renewal of spiritual and emotional resources. When we have a loss, we are depleted. But that's exactly the point at which we've got to pick up the shovel or the bucket and head to the creek or head back to the beach, back to the corner of the yard where the Sox live, or deep into our spiritual core. A beautiful prayer by the modern liturgist and poet Marcia Falk substitutes the traditional Baruch Atah Adonai, praised are you, O Lord, or Sovereign, with Nevarech et Ein HaChayim. Let us bless the wellspring of life. Words I find so healing to say. I invite you to try it at any time. Let us bless the wellspring of life. While we are here, we have a place to dig, a place to look, a place to search. The wells have been stopped up over and over again for a long time. But by digging over and over again into the wellspring of spirit, We say we are willing to flow again into the stream of life. And along the way, we find ways to honor both what we have lost and the unique people that we are continuing to become. Let us dig new wells and bless the wellspring of life. May it continue to sustain us. Amen. Shabbat shalom.